calling the City Council Urban Affairs Committee meeting to order. It is Tuesday, May 25th. We do have two items on our agenda this evening. The first one is order number 21-108-77, application for site plan review from Attorney Brian Falk on behalf of construct a mixed-use project within the Marlborough Village District, 28 South Bolton Street, and continue review 21-18216 proposed zoning map amendment results mixed use overlay district and proposed revisions to chapter 650 section 33 of the zoning code. Because I am on Teams, I believe some of the members of the Urban Affairs are in chambers. We are following the governor's rules, and I'm going to call a roll call. And if there are any votes taken, they will all be by roll call this evening. So, members on Urban Affairs, Councilor Landers.
Councilor Landers is here. Present.
Navin?
Councilor Navin is present.
Councilor Doucette?
Councilor Doucette is present.
Councilor Wagner?
Councilor Wagner is present.
And Councilor Roby is present. I believe in chambers we also have Councilor Ossing, Councilor Dumas, Councilor, is there anybody else? Councilor?
Councilor Perlman is remote, that's it.
And, yeah, I haven't gotten to the remote part, and Councilor Perlman is here on Teams. My plan was to take the results way first, but I do not see that we have Attorney Tam on with us. Am I missing him being here?
I am here, Madam Chair.
Oh, okay. So we will begin with that discussion. Sorry for part two. We will go through this as quickly as we can. This is continued review. I believe all the city councilors received a couple of documents throughout the day today that do have some of the changes that were discussed at the last meeting highlighted. I'd like to kind of go through this and make sure that we are clarifying from original document what changes are being made. I know we recently received another change from what was sent earlier in the day for this on the first page, A2, where it now reads that the RWMUOD is adjacent to Cimarrano Drive and Forest Street as indicated on the city's zoning map. The RWMUOD shall consist of two separate districts, one sub-district 1 as more particularly described in Exhibit A annexed here 2 and incorporated by reference therein, and 2 sub-district number 2 as more particularly described as annexed here 2 and incorporated by reference therein. And then we have a new couple of documents at the very end, page 11 and page 12 and page 13. Exhibit A is now specifically describing the piece of the property that were in the original part of the results with mixed use overlay district. Then we have Exhibit B, which is the additional piece and the new part of this. And then we have a map, which was a separate document that was sent and is not part of the specific changes to this, but the map does show the site. So that kind of takes care of my issue. I know the original document that we were sent from from Attorney Tam that the solicitor had looked at still kept it just Exhibit A. I had talked to the solicitor and he agreed with me that it does make more sense to have Exhibit A stand intact because of the development agreement that references it. So is everybody okay with the new change that's in, I guess if you're looking at your documents, it's revision V13 on the bottom of the papers? And then we can go through the whole document and just kind of specify where, in fact, that change then does make a difference in the document. There is a new number 4, specifies within each sub-district 1, MUD shall be permitted, which shall each be subject to a separate development agreement, and the master concept plan is described in subsection C below. Section C, the master concept plan, where it had before said the property owner developer of the RWMUOD, it now says each sub-district. And it adds in that the approval of the site plan and special permit for the MUD within the applicable sub-district in that part. And then throughout the document, anywhere where it had originally said either the or the entire Results Way Mixed Use Overlay District now specifies applicable sub-district for each sub-district. And those changes are mostly in section C as you go through number 1, number 2, and then there is a new section C that reads, notwithstanding anything contained in any current or future development agreement to the contrary, each development agreement shall only apply to the applicable sub-district and shall not govern any development or other sub-districts within the Results Way Mixed Use Overlay District. So again, in D is the change where it talks about the sub-district rather than the Results Way as a whole. I'm going to, let's see, then where are we? In E, eligible uses, we have the multifamily dwelling, which talks about what's currently in there. It's now sub-district 1 is up to 350 dwelling units, including without limitation age-restricted dwelling units. And it's adding in the piece for sub-district 2, which is up to 100 dwelling units, including without limitation age-restricted dwellings. Also allowed are retail sales and services in each sub-district. They are allowed up to 75,000 square feet of total gross floor space, or gross floor area, and up to 10,000 square feet of gross floor area per establishment. Then we get to number 2, which talks about things that are permitted by special permit in the Results Way Mixed Use Overlay District. It specifies that in A, it's in sub-district 1 only, talks about the multifamily dwelling where they could, by special permit, have more than 350 dwelling units. And they are allowed by special permit to have drive-through facilities. I'm going to skip over C and D for now because I think we're going to have a little longer conversation on those. I'm also skipping over number 3, G, which is that blue part there. And just go through the rest of the document where it clarifies in number F, F6. It adds in the maximum lot coverage is calculated on the land of the applicable and not on an individual lot basis, and shall not exceed 60% of the total area of the applicable sub-district. In Section J, where it's standards for roadways and drainage in the stormwater management system, again, it specifies each MUD within the overlay district shall have a stormwater management system. designed in accordance with the applicable rules and regulations, and amendments. After approval, an owner developer may seek amendments to the approved permits. And I think it is making a correction on that very last part. If it is determined revisions to a special permit are not minor per 650-57 of the code. So I went through those quickly, but everybody had a chance. I think it's really, the major details of those is just clarifying for the pieces that it's, as we now have 2 sub-districts, that we want to be able to have specificity for each of those. And we already have it for the existing Exhibit A, which is now considered Sub-District 1. And we will work on, if this is approved, the development agreement and other details for the new Sub-District 2. So are there questions on that part of it from members of the committee?
Madam Chair, it's Councilor Doucette.
Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much. I pretty much followed everything that was going through. One question I have just as far as the process goes is Section C refers to the master concept plan, and that is to be filed separately and voted on separately, so that when that's not part of this document or this hearing, right? That will be coming back. Okay. So,
Yep, both the master concept plan and a development agreement will be created for the new Sub-District 2, assuming that this document is approved. If we don't approve this,
they're not going to do
there's
it.
no new Sub-District and no
Right.
need for a development agreement.
Okay. Yep. No, I was just trying to get clarification for the process going forward. Appreciate that.
Yep, more work going forward if this is approved.
Right. Right. Yep. Okay.
Anybody else that might have a question on things discussed so far? Do I see a hand for Council Wagner, or no, it's just the angle? All right, anybody not on the committee that's on, do they have questions?
Councilor Roby, this is Councilor Dumas.
Councilor Dumas.
Thank you. So I guess my concern is that how large the scope of this project is. If my math is correct, they have about 120 acres, which allows them to build on 72 acres, which is 60%. I think that number is rather high, especially for what they want to put into this property. I have a whole spiel as to why I think it's too big if you want to indulge me. If not, we can wait for another time. I'm just curious to see when the discussion is on the project itself as opposed to the nitty-gritty details. Like, I'm concerned about infrastructure, sewer, water, traffic, all the big things, as opposed to what the developer wants to see happen, and as opposed to what this will do to the city in Ward 3 specific.
Councilor Dumas, some of that can get discussed as we do the master plan. If we approve this document, what they can have in there by right would be listed, what they could have by special permit, and what they can't have at all are all very specifically clarified. I think we got a concept of what they want to put in when they did their public hearing presentation. They sort of gave us an overview of a site plan that was approved, I don't know, back in 2006, maybe earlier than that, where some of this can just get done. Most of that was manufacturing only. They gave us kind of a picture of the idea for the ring at the campus with the restaurant, the housing down below. So as you can see, the housing would be by right for their 100. We kind of started with the by right for the apartments with the original, and then we amended the development agreement and amended so that they could have the special permit. We approved Avalon 2 for that special permit. unless we come in and amend this, they can only have 100 housing units, but I had addressed that I didn't think that they need housing as part of the project. That's my main focus. I think it would be hard to have different percentages of buildable for both sides of it, but I guess that could be a discussion we might have. The other property we put a limit on because of what's allowed in the code. They can only do a certain percentage based on the land that they have. So I know there's going to be a lot going on at the top of the campus, assuming this is approved, and I hear your point. I can offer you a couple minutes if you want to elaborate.
So Ward 3 is obviously largely being developed. So based just upon my notes of when I had been on a council for Ward 3, we've approved the Green Project, which has about 500 units, Talia, Stonegate, and now we're talking about 10 buildings with BJ's coming in with 800 employees alone, and that's just in one building, with 800 cars coming and going. If they build the other 9 buildings, and each one has 800 cars, we're talking a lot of traffic coming and going in that area. You guys can do the math on how many cars that is. I understand that 495 is right there. I get that. However, my concern is lunch breaks, breakfasts, all heading to Apex or the Hannaford's Plaza, coming and going. The traffic there already is a nightmare with the development. Apex is great for the city. I understand that, but I think that it was still too large, and I don't want the same mistake to happen with this project on the magnitude and the size of this project based upon the traffic and the infrastructure that it's going to entail in the specific ward. There's numerous items coming down the pipeline in this ward that developers have reached out to me. So my concern is when we build this or we let this get the green light, it's going to cause a lot more damage regarding traffic. Like I said, Ward 3 is just overly developed. AMSA just bought their two buildings, so they'll probably be growing as well. So the school down there, with Quet Diagnostics, the 2 hotels. There's a manufacturing that's being built by right on Nickerson and Boston Post Road, which is going to add more traffic. I just want people to be, the other councilors be aware that there's a lot going on in this area of the Ward 3. And I can't stress that enough for my constituents in the traffic that's already there and that may be coming down the pipeline. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Dumas. And I would agree there's a lot going on in there. I would caution that even if this is not approved as an overlay, there is still the potential for buildings to be built up on the campus based on an earlier site plan approval.
Right.
Where we would not be involved at all. They would just go in by right for most of them. So there could still be potential buildings built. My guess is if they're based on the kind of biomanufacturing that seems to be the push for the city, there's not as many employees as we used to think of. It's not going to be a Quest with the GE that was there with people sitting at desks. There'll be less employees maybe, so less cars, but I hear your point.
If I could just add to that, Councilor Roby, I met with these individuals and they told me the same thing, and now their first business that is coming in is BJ's with 800 cars. So I want to believe that it's going to be more manufacturing, but now with 800 to 1,000 cars already in building 1, I get that, but just because another building or they can build what they want, I just want to remind the council that we can control what goes in by this, and that's just all I'm saying. I want to be able to control it, minimize it as much as we can to make it a right fit for not only for them, but for the city as well. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
I'm sorry, was there someone else?
Yes,
Councilor Landers, is that you?
No, Madam Chair, Councilor Ossing.
Oh, Councilor Ossing, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could respond to Councilor Dumas. One of the 800 people that are coming to BJ's is independent of this. That's a current office space. The current site plan, they can duplicate that office space around the rest of the facility to bring in all those cars. The advantage of what's before us here, should this get approved, is we then now have the opportunity to shape what's coming in, so that you wouldn't be building another 650,000 square feet of office space. You'd be building what they're proposing is biomanufacturing type facilities, which would require a lot less cars and people. And then the key part that Councilor Doucette touched on, if this gets approved, they then have to come back to us for the agreement and the development agreement and the concept plan, of which we then get, and if you go back and look at the one we did for the other side of the street, there's mitigation to offset traffic, that if we don't approve something like this and they go back and just build the office space or something else, we don't get a swing at that pitch.
Right.
So I mean, this is pretty attractive from the standpoint of allowing the council to have some input on what actually goes there. Because if this doesn't, I mean, and then they can build by right, and they'll go put the office spaces and stuff in, that we then don't have the mitigation opportunities that would present itself before the council. So I would just weigh that in consideration,
No,
because it's an important piece that is not just office space coming, because that will bring the cars. If that's, I mean, your crystal ball is probably better than mine.
No,
I have no idea what's coming.
I respect everything you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying. It's just, I'm voicing my concerns and the councilors to be aware of how much development is happening in Ward 3. Other councilors in other wards are they're ward specific, and I get that, and councilors at large, I want you to realize what's going on in Ward 3 and how much development is happening there. That's my 2 cents. I just want to remind all of the development that's been happening is in Ward 3. We're giving a lot of time to McGee's Farm, and we should. It's just one project in one ward, and we have every right to go through that whole process, but there's a lot of projects that are happening in Ward 3. That's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. So anybody else with comments on the,
Council Roby, Council Landers.
Councilor Landers?
Yeah, just to back up, what the president was mentioned, but also Council Dumas, Ward 3 has land and it has a pretty good road system out there. You're a stone's throw from the interchange, Cimarron Drive. That interchange does work pretty well. I've been out there watching the construction of the new hotel. But as the president mentioned, I can remember being at the dedication for 3Com. That was in, 93, 94. And the buzzword was, yep, we can build 3 more buildings just like 3Com. Well, that was the thought back in the early 90s, the mid 90s. Well, we don't have to, I don't worry about that so much now, because you're not going to see 3 buildings the size of 3Com that's going to bring in, 2,400 or 2,700 employees, because the businesses that they bring in are going to be different. There's without a doubt going to be less employees. But I think the key is, and I think as the president mentioned, we're going to have more say. And we know a lot more now than we did 20 years ago. And, we're reaching the point now that there isn't much land in Marlborough left. So I think we're watching it more closely. And fortunately or unfortunately, it's Ward 3 that does have the land available. I think, 121 acres, that's a lot of land. When you go out west, that's not much. There's farmers that own 120 acres, but this is the whole city. So I share your concern, and it's easy for me to sit here because it doesn't matter what you build there, I'm not going to have more traffic on Crosby Road. And I realize that. But what I hope it does, all right, it allows the city to have this smart growth that gives opportunities for people to get good jobs, technical jobs. And also, we saw what the last 15 months have done you know, we do need that revenue that the restaurants generate, you know, if we want to continue doing some of the improvements that we've done, and also business to start utilizing the hotels and get our tax there. So I think, as I mentioned, starting, you know, a few minutes ago, it's your ward, but you have the land and you have the road. That's all, Council, Chairman, that's it.
All right, thank you. So
Madam-
anybody else with general comments on the change?
Madam Chair, it's Councilor Doucette.
Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much. So it's interesting because I was actually in this area. I didn't make it up the hill. I was on my bike today, but I did make it through the original Results Way district area. And back in the day, that property was also joined to the company, you know, the buildings that are now TJX further down. I forget the name. Value Way, I think the name is now. It used to be Puritan Way with Fidelity. But that whole complex, which was basically Forest Street, Cimarano Drive, way down to the other end, I think is actually a larger acreage than this combination. You know, that's just a ballpark look. And that was owned by one company, you know, at that time, and they were planning to continue to build buildings down Cimarano Drive, you know, on the other side of the access to 495. You know, I think as far as traffic goes, you know, you have at least 3 or 4 points of access within a mile or so. You got 290, you got 3 access points to 495. So it's easy egress in and out of the city, for better or for worse. I agree completely as far as water and sewer, you know, infrastructure probably would have to be upgraded as we start doing this, because biotech does use a lot more water and sewer than high tech ever did. So we have to take that into account. And I think that's an important thing that we have to look at when they come with the proposal of the master plan. But I'm comfortable with taking this to the next level and, you know, see where it goes. I also think that, you know, I can't imagine someone living so close to their house, and you're talking to someone who basically lives a quarter mile from their business that they work at. You know, it's not necessarily something that you fall into, but it's not something you buy into. And I'm not sure if you want to, you know, having that housing so close to biotech manufacturing is kind of, you know, not necessarily the greatest idea I can think of. But I'm leaving it up to them if they think it's the right thing, but I wouldn't do more than 100 for sure. That's all I need to say. Thank you.
All right, Councilor Croman, you have your hand up also.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And just to kind of reflect on some of the comments made, you know, I really want to appreciate Councilor Dumas for speaking up for his ward and highlighting several of the projects that are coming down the pipeline. And I think it'd be helpful to have a sense of the order of operations in terms of when some of these things might be completed, especially given the high priority of the fire station that we've all been wanting, and knowing that that would be extremely pivotal for this side of the community. So I don't know if there's a set timeline on if something were approved, when everything would be built, but I would imagine that the public safety infrastructure would be a heavy priority for us to consider prior to approving additional projects. So just wanted to put that in the conversation as well, with the water and sewer concerns, but also the fire safety as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Croman. I would agree with you. Unfortunately, we don't really control that we can control it to a certain extent. We can put things in the development agreement on how things proceed. I know it has been suggested to me that we put in that the housing can't be built until a certain number of the manufacturing is built. I don't know if that will be something that the developer appreciates, because I think they want that housing done immediately. But I know that there already were discussions at site plan for a building that was hoping to be built. I had brought up the fact it probably should wait until we see where this goes, because if this goes forward, that kind of piece needs to be put into the development agreement, and site plan becomes under the purview of the city council. So I know that the owners of the property want to move forward. They have big plans on offering their site for potential people to move in. And I don't know that, I guess the specificity of the buildings will kind of be up to whether they get a client or not to move into them. So I don't know if that helps or makes a difference. It has to be one step at a time. They can't do anything until we approve this. If we don't approve this zoning change, they can just build under the original site plan that they had approved for them.
If I may, just to respond, I'm curious, do we have an existing, and I've been pulling up the ward maps to kind of bring to life some of this conversation for myself. Do we have an existing map of the city with maybe like marks of where the certain projects are? Like all housing projects going on in the city right now, development, just so people get that bird's eye approach? Because I think Councilor Dumas raised some really great points about thinking of how things are happening in the city as a whole, and I imagine a map might be useful, and didn't know if there was one in existence with things marked.
I think when I looked at the GIS map, and maybe I think we have Mr. DePercio on with us, but I think when you look at the GIS map, there is an option to look where special permits have been pulled. I've never actually clicked on it, so I don't know if in fact it does work. Those would be a little, and I don't know if it was special permits or permits in general. If it is permits, then that would give you a clue as to where things are up there. So, Mr. DePercio, can you answer that question?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think what you're speaking of is the something that's through the building department as far as permits being pulled. We do not have anything that is kind of what Councilor Perman is describing, and that it shows, recently applied for projects or things that are in approvals now. We really don't have anything in the GIS that would do that.
Okay, so does that answer your question, Councilor Perlman?
Yes, and just to clarify, Mr. Percio, do you mean that it could never be done, or it's just currently not being done through the GIS mapping?
Right, yeah, we just don't have, that's not a layer that we keep at this time. It's something that could be put together, though.
Yeah, I think it might be a great idea moving forward to have something like that. It might be a good project or something to have down the pipeline as we move forward, given the volume of projects before the council.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that going to site plan is actually very interesting, and I guess I'm fortunate that I can attend. Those are held during the day, but it's amazing how many projects you learn about that are coming into the city that the council would not have a clue were happening, because they don't require a special permit. They don't require our involvement at all. They're just a business that is being built within the city. So that is, those were being taped. I don't know if that will disappear or not, so that the ability to look at those will go away. But it's, I'm sure that we get the agenda, so you can find out the information. All right, I think what may take some time, aside from just the general discussion, is getting back to some specificity. And I think it's still on page 6. I'm looking at version 12, not the newest new version 15. We need to have a discussion on the piece that is additional uses by special permit. So I think it's number 2.
Chair Roby, before we jump into that, this is Councilor Wagner. I'd like to ask a quick question about housing, just to clarify the clarification on the housing question. Is the house, is that appropriate time, or do you want me to hold it?
No, fine, go ahead. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Is
You
the
were
100
all done with questions, but if you have one.
the 100 units, is the intention, when I was reading it, is the intention for them to be like company-owned units that will be then, for employees? Or is this just 100 units that's going to be on the market and doesn't really, it feels like it goes with the whole picture of this project. So I was just curious if it's like for market available apartments, or will be company-owned units.
I know we have Attorney Hammond. I'm not sure if anybody else is, but my recollection from the public hearing discussion was that Avalon is being hired as the builder of this. They're just continuing what they have. Whether there'll be townhouses, I guess, will be something that we look at further along. But my understanding is these are going to be market rate housing, and that they are a important piece for the owner of the property, was my understanding, because I asked the same thing. Why do you need the houses? If you think about what 100 houses, my assumption is they're going to lease the land to Avalon, and they're going to be getting income. This is going to be steady income for the property owners, where the potential of the biomanufacturing is a maybe. Maybe someone will come and fill their space. Housing, I think we're pretty sure people will come. Avalon 2 is full. So there's not, people aren't not filling those houses. So that's my understanding. And I don't know, Attorney Tam, if you have a different understanding of the housing than I do.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Councillor Wagner. I hope you all can hear me. David Gillespie from Avalon Bay is on, as well as Kevin Sheehan from Greatland. And I think, Madam Chair, you accurately summarized the intent here. And I think Kevin Sheehan's partner, Phil Dorman, 2 weeks ago outlined the rationale. This is no more than 100 direct entry or townhome units. If the zoning were to be adopted, they would be on the undeveloped.
Attorney Tam, I think you just went.
The intent and purpose of the housing is both to create a market and to provide capital to support the mixed-use development on the hill. These would be market units, apartment units. They are, I think, integral to the mixed-use development on the hill and the type of activity that Greatland is contemplating. And they also provide for much-needed capital to support the restaurant and the mix to attract the biomanufacturing and the bio activity that Greatland is contemplating for this site.
Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I got one more question about housing.
Yes, Councillor Doucette.
Yeah, just a quick question. Are they going to be condos or apartments?
Madam Chair, through you, they would be apartments.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Are we ready to get down to the special permit area where we, based on what we talked about at the last meeting, which was a lengthy discussion on toxic and hazardous chemicals, Attorney Tam and the solicitor, or most I think Attorney Tam, had put in a new piece into this. So it's C and D, a piece that's underlined in blue. In Subdistrict 2 only, manufacturing or warehousing, including but not limited to biomanufacturing facilities involving toxic or hazardous chemical manufacturing activities, notwithstanding any other provision of this section. And then 2D in Subdistrict 2 only biosafety level 3 laboratories as defined by the United States Center for Disease Control and Prevention. So I think 2D is specifically a suggestion that came from the planning board. 2C is a suggestion that came from our discussion, and I had a conversation with Attorney Tam. I'm going to let him take over to kind of talk about an issue that is now being discussed between him and his client with the language that he has submitted. So, Attorney Tam?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and appreciate. I think your introduction to the issue was spot on. The biosafety level 3 issue, for those who don't remember, this is a use that's allowed in the existing overlay today, and we, in listening to the Planning Board's recommendations, agreed to submit to additional restrictions in this sub-district. So what we're saying in D is that if there were to be a biosafety level 3 user or tenant that was interested, we would submit to a special permit from you, the council, whereas in the existing overlay, that would not be necessary. With respect to the proposed subsection C, this came out of the discussion from 2 weeks ago, where we had identified an issue in the existing overlay district, and this is just in the existing overlay district, where there is a restriction on hazardous and toxic chemical manufacturing. And we had a discussion with those that were present about how to handle this, and the fire chief was among those that participated, I think, at the recommendation of the chair. We ultimately were given some homework, which was, I think, a compromise that when it comes to actual manufacturing of hazardous or toxic materials, that would be subject to a special permit, and we were to work with the city solicitor on the specifics. We offer this language, but we're not quite settled on it because of one concern. And that is something that we're prepared to advance with the city solicitor and come back to you on. And there's a distinction between hazardous chemical manufacturing and simple use or storage of hazardous materials. And we just need certainty that the latter, which is the storage or use of hazardous materials, is, as the fire chief pointed, in accordance with applicable law all over the city. So that's the one item that we were very pleased with the progress and with the amount of attention that the committee and the council have spent on this matter. But we do think it's appropriate to defer on this specific issue, understanding I think we've really narrowed the issues. And to come back to you at your next available meeting with agreement from the city solicitor as to how to clearly distinguish hazardous material manufacturing and the simple use or storage of hazardous materials. Thank you.
Well, as I stated, and as Mr. Tam had just gone over again, I think our discussion last week pretty much did specify, the fire chief did let us know that there are many areas within the city, many sites that are using toxic and hazardous chemicals as they work on a daily basis. So the issue, at least for me, was the manufacturing of those versus using those kinds of things as you're going about your business. And so I think that's the concern for the owner of the property, that if we're saying that you need a special permit for something that is really allowed by right, if you read the city, the listing of definitions and the allowable uses, that he needs to work on this a little bit more. So although I think there was hope that we would be able to wrap this up tonight and bring a recommendation, if the committee is amenable, I think we can keep this in committee for one more meeting and let Attorney Tam work with the city solicitor to come up with some language.
Madam Chair, it's Councilor Doucette.
Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So I understand, at least I think I understand what the concerns are, and it's appropriate. My question more to do with, biomanufacturing, the hazardous chemical manufacturing is one thing, biomanufacturing is another thing. You can biomanufacture a product that is effectively a hazardous chemical, even though the material it's made out of is natural elements and not hazardous chemicals to begin with. So if you catch my drift with this, and maybe this is where you guys are going, is basically, how do we make sure that the biomanufacturing doesn't generate hazardous material that can escape out of the lab, to use a phrase that's been in the press recently. I want to make sure that, the biomanufacturing is safe as much as it would be if it was hazardous chemicals. Does that make sense?
Councilor just said it does make sense to me, and I hear you. I think that if I'm remembering from what the fire chief said, that we currently have facilities, though, that are biomedical, that are producing something that is technically toxic or hazardous, but they're doing it under federal regulations, and they're doing it with the fire department knowing that they have those chemicals there and the building meets all of the code. So if you read what's in the city code for manufacturing and warehousing, it very specifically says that it's manufacturing of biomedical or biotechnology products that are subject to the provisions governing biomedical research in another subsection of the code that really talks about our DNA stuff. So that's a little beyond my field of knowledge, but I think that the issue for the attorney is that currently they can do that by right. So we have put in here that it is requiring a special permit because of the involvement of the toxic or hazardous chemical manufacturing activity. And I think that's where we need to make sure, are we as a body, in fact, comfortable letting manufacturing or warehousing, as described in number 36 of the descriptions, are we okay with letting them do that on this site and keeping the current hazardous and toxic chemical manufacturing not allowed at all on this site? Although you may be able to do it somewhere else in Marlborough, we don't want it on this site or the other site, because this is the language that came from the original. And are we okay with not having 2C exist as a special permit, but in fact exist as simply something by right? And I think that's what we need to decide at this committee level.
Madam Chair, Councilor Navin.
Councilor Navin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the points you brought up here, and I think that it does make sense. I would be supportive to leave this in committee to let the solicitor and Attorney Tam kind of think about this a little bit further. I would just say that I do appreciate the applicant's willingness to take something that is already a by right in this particular area, and giving the council oversight for the biohazard level 3 materials, to allow the council to continue to have oversight over that in the future if they want to. If they have a client that wants to come in and do that activity, that the council will be able to have some oversight over that. So I do appreciate that, and I think that where applicable, we can flex some oversight on hazardous materials that are still both in line with federal regulations and then also, you know, fair for what's allowed throughout the rest of the city by other businesses makes a good amount of sense. So provided Attorney Tam and the solicitor can come to an agreement on that, and the committee is amenable, I think that's a good idea. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Navin. Any other committee members?
Councilor Roby, Councilor Landers.
Councilor Landers.
Just to expand upon that a little bit, what Councilor Navin mentioned, that, you know, certain things by right, but if they are willing to request or get a special permit, all right, what that does to me, it gets the discussion when they're applying for a special permit, it gets it out in the open, it gives the fire department a chance to really do their homework and get involved. It gives our legal team to get involved. So if you have something that they could do by right, but they're coming in for a special permit, as I just mentioned, it gets it out in the open. I mean, this is, it's not so new to us because, you know, we've had a couple out in Bartlett Street there, DuPont. They've changed names a couple of times, but they've been around a long time. And, you know, it so happens, I saw the fire chief last night outside City Hall, and, you know, I mentioned to the chief, you know, we haven't done lunch for a while, so we do have lunch next week. And that might be one of our topics, just to give me some ideas that I can bring back and ask. But I think, as Councilor Navin mentioned, makes me feel a lot more comfortable that if they have a client that wants to come in and, you know, manufacture it or work with it, that we get it all out in the open, and I think everybody would feel a lot better. That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I think the distinction is they're very comfortable with keeping in by special permit the biosafety level 3. The issue becomes more the toxic and hazardous chemical manufacturing, because if you read the current language, it doesn't really talk about those things. It just says that manufacturing or warehousing would be allowed. So I think that becomes the issue of where does the toxic and hazardous chemical come to play. So if everybody's okay, I think we will leave this in committee, let Attorney Tam talk to the solicitor, see if they can come up with language that clarifies how, if one part would be special permit and one part would be allowed by right, as it currently sounds like it is. Does that sound okay with everybody? And we can move on to our second agenda item.
Madam Chair, Councilor Ossing.
Councilor Ossing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just, and I know you're aware of it, we only have 2 meetings left before the 90 days expires, so I would ask that the applicant work closely with the solicitor, and if they can get on your June 3rd Urban Affairs meeting, that would probably be appropriate. Thank you.
And that's what I was going to mention to Attorney Tam, because I did not have a chance to let him know that we do have a meeting set up for 3rd. And if that works for you, we would bring this back and hopefully wrap up.
That would be ideal, Madam Chair. We appreciate all the time and the comments from the committee and council.
All right, and if it looks like at that point there's an issue, we could always ask for you to file an extension. So we're in the clear.
Madam Chair, just a point of clarification, this is a zoning change. There are no extensions. It expires in 90 days, and you have to repeat the process with a public hearing and a planning board public hearing.
Thank you. Yes, it's hard to keep track of all of those distinctions, and yes, thank you for reminding me of that. So we really want to avoid having to go through that whole process all over again if we can get this wrapped up. So we will add you to that agenda and see what you come up with.
Thank you.
All right. So we will continue with part 2 of this, which is our discussion on for Marlborough Village District at 28 South Bolton Street. And I know, again, we received a lot of information today, and I believe, Attorney Falk, you have a presentation that should be queued up, ready for you to go with.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, councilors. And please let me know if anyone has any trouble hearing me. I know there's been some echo effect going on tonight, but anyone can't hear me, if I break up, please let me know. For the record again, Brian Falk from Myrick O'Connell here on behalf of my client WOHO. We are excited to introduce this innovative downtown project to the council. If we could just advance to the next slide, please. Thank you. This is a proposed mixed-use development at 28 South Bolton Street in the Marlborough Village District, with ground floor commercial space, 44 residential units, and on-site parking. WOHO is a new development company, but its team members have extensive backgrounds in architecture and design and are looking to bring their sustainable construction concept to Marlborough to add to the vitality of the downtown area. Mixed-use projects were what the city had in mind when it enacted the Village District in 2014. That's why these uses are allowed as of right rather than special permit. The council retained site plan review authority, but did not require a discretionary special permit, looking to encourage these types of projects. Since 2014, there have been 4 mixed-use projects approved for the Village District, but so far none of them have pulled a building permit, including a proposal for this same site. There are different reasons for that, but we're hopeful that the WOHO team and its unique approach to economically feasible and sustainable construction will be able to move forward and bring a new mixed-use project to downtown Marlborough. So again, we're before you with an as-of-right use subject to reasonable conditions through site plan approval. To make matters easier for everyone, our project is very similar in scope to the project that was approved for this site in 2018. You'll see in our presentation that there's very little difference in terms of building size and unit count. And the building footprint is virtually identical on that site. Since filing our application, we've met with the Professional Site Plan Committee 3 different times. I know you received a memo today with comments and suggested conditions from the Site Plan Committee. We've gone through that memo, and we believe we can address all those comments through minor changes to the submitted site plan and the draft decision that we submitted. I think our adherence to the basic parameters of the 2018 plan is the reason the Site Plan Committee's comments were limited and fairly easy for us to address. Through our work with the Site Plan Committee, we've modified our building design to incorporate more of the Village District design guidelines. You should all have a short memo that we prepared describing the various zoning requirements and the design guidelines and how our project complies. We fully understand that this building design is unique, but we took great pains to ensure that the building meets the city's zoning requirements and design guidelines. And our design is one that we feel confident can move past the permitting phase and come to fruition. I think you'll also find that this project provides many of the things that I'm usually hearing from the council on a residential project that the council wants to see. Walkability, proximity to downtown, green design, all electric utilities, rooftop solar, rooftop amenities for residents, limited bedroom counts, and integration with the neighborhood and the downtown area. WOHO's project has all of that, and our building design makes that happen. The building is surrounded by balconies, as you can see in this image, and that will make the building look alive with new and relocated residents downtown. This is what the city had in mind when it encouraged as-of-right projects downtown, to bring residents close to downtown amenities and to bring regular support to downtown businesses. At this point, I'm going to turn things over to Zach Carizzi, WOHO's Chief Development Officer. He's going to walk you through the project and WOHO's approach. Zach?
Thank you, Brian. Good evening, Madam Chair, councilors, and committee members. And thank you again for the opportunity to further discuss our proposed project here at 28 South Bolton Street. You have the entire WOHO team on the call, on the meeting. Anton Garcia-Abril, Deborah Mesa, Israel Ruiz, Alan Markham, and myself, Zach Carizzi. You also have Jason Lavoie, our civil engineer from WSP. As Brian articulated, we just want to go through a 10-minute presentation to provide an overview on our current design, speak a little bit about this unique development approach that WOHO really is all about and is allowing for the feasibility of this project. And then finally discuss some of these design elements as it relates to the zoning code as well as the Marlborough Village District guidelines. You can go ahead and advance to the next slide if you don't mind. As Brian mentioned, we've proposed a 6-story, 63,000 gross square foot mixed-use project for the site. The previous slide actually had some view shots along Granger Boulevard and the intersection of South Fulton Street. And in particular, not only does our design encapsulate a sustainable approach, we've really tried to integrate varied materiality. You can see here from these view corridors, the precast concrete panels of the 5 stories above our ground floor podium that are related to our WOHO system and the residential floors. And on the ground floor, we've tried to incorporate some use of brick as well as stone to really tie into the fabric of downtown Marlborough. You can see in the top right and the bottom left, the Main Street Bank building, which also has this stone facade as well as the brick elements. Just want to also point out on this slide, the southwest corner of our project and building is anchored by the 1,200 square feet of commercial space that Brian mentioned. This is really important not only to our site, but we believe the entire downtown area as to further activate this really important corner site at the intersection of Fulton Street and Granger Boulevard. You can go ahead to the next slide if you don't mind. These are just some more design shots of our project, panned out a little bit to show scale within the downtown Marlborough corridor. I think we might have advanced one extra slide. More or less, the previous slide was aimed to show the scale of the building. It's 68 feet in height, which corresponds to the previous approvals on the site. It includes 6 stories, 5 stories of residential housing, 44 units, from studios all the way to 2 bedrooms. And it includes a footprint that's very similar to the previous approvals. You can see in the bottom left picture, as well as the bottom right, the tying into Centennial Park, which is across the street. The ground floor, which includes this use of brick, we've really tried to integrate with some of the historic context of downtown Marlborough and align with the Marlborough Village District guidelines that Brian mentioned. So taking a step back from the exterior design images that we've put forth to date, we wanted to give you a brief overview of WOHO and our new approach to development. We've engineered a component system consisting of 4 pieces, which really integrates design, engineering, and construction into one system. These 4 components, which you can see in the top left diagram there, consist of a slab element, which constitutes the floor, and the underside actually creates the ceiling for the unit. A chassis component, which is essentially the mechanical equipment for the unit, as well as the kitchen and bathrooms. A wall element, which has the structural columns embedded within the component. And then finally, the facade component, which can include solid surfaces as well as the glass that's shown there. What's really important about this componentized system is the components are prefabricated offsite and then combined on-site to create a 3D monolithic structure with that on-site assembly. This allows for logistics from our production facility in Massachusetts and reduces the overall transportation from our factory to the site to allow for this assembly. And overall, that really reduces the overall carbon footprint of our project. The reason why we're advancing with this system for this site is it creates the economic feasibility for the project to really get off the ground. It allows for faster construction, it reduces the carbon footprint, which I just mentioned, and with all of that, by truncating the construction timeline, the time we're actually spending on site to assemble these components is drastically reduced, which will minimize the disruption for the intersection of South Fulton Street and Granger Boulevard, as well as the entire downtown area, both with construction noise as well as the commotion of your typical on-site construction. If you don't mind just advancing, there we go. Here's just another snapshot of the main WOHO components of our system. Again, the chassis, the slab, the wall, and the facade elements. And really what we wanted to show here is the actual footage and shots of these components being assembled on site into a structure. These are lightweight components in form, and they combine structurally on site with concrete to form a reinforced concrete structure. This lightweight aspect not only reduces the material usage and on-site maneuvers, but it also allows for the hastened construction timeline that I mentioned before. This all in design, engineering, and construction allows for project feasibility and allows for a high-quality system to get off the ground that creates a sustainable end product, which Deborah is going to talk about on this next slide.
Yes, this is a very important part that we also wanted to highlight, how a lot of the things that go into the project, from prefabrication to the selection of materials to how things are fabricated and put together, it comes to an approach to sustainability where we are really trying to tackle some of the biggest problems that construction industry has, in terms of pollution, in terms of waste of materials, in terms of the life cycle, the resilience of buildings, energy consumption, etc. No? So we are looking at sustainability from multiple fronts. Just to mention the four main ones, definitely the materials that we work with. We're working with high performance concretes. These are concrete is an old material, but the type of concrete that we are using is a very new material that allows us to use the most resistant concrete, therefore reduce the weight of the components and the amount of concrete that we're using very importantly. And also we are working with low carbon concretes and really trying to advance this material with our technologies. Along this material, we are using some of the most also high quality finishes, equipment for mechanical systems, and so on. So we are really looking at a building that will require low maintenance and that will resist across the time. So there's also an attention placed on energy consumption in our process of fabrication and also in the building itself, in how we use highly insulated components that then reduce the load on the mechanical equipment, how we are looking at trying to get fully electric buildings using also renewable sources of energy. And in this case, we are looking to place solar panels that would supplement grid power or even give back the grid power, the excess of energy that the building would produce. But that definitely would advance how buildings today integrate these type of systems in their kind of core structure. There's also a lot that we are doing that is usually hidden, which is how things come together and are fabricated. We are looking at the construction logistics. That's why we are working with prefabrication, doing most of the construction off-site, which will definitely reduce the impact of construction in the neighborhood, but then allows us to really control time, quality, cost, and so this is something that our factory is located very close also to this site, and this is why we are very excited to be doing our project one in Marlborough, no? Because also in terms of transportation of materials, we will be able to be very efficient, no? And then last but not least, maybe the most important is how the building with the kind of high quality of the materials, of the mechanical systems, and also of the architectural qualities, like those balconies that you see on the south, the kind of floor-to-ceiling windows are aimed at providing maximum daylight conditions, enabling also ventilation and integrating outdoor spaces inside the units as much as possible. And this kind of focus on how to create healthy environments is placed in the units, but also in all of the shared spaces. The corridors have natural light, and also in all of the ground level that we are trying to activate with retail, with the lobby, and also with the landscaping to provide, in this case, also spaces that will not only be for the residents, but for the neighbors. And Zach, you can take it from here and continue discussing the next items.
Thank you very much, Deborah. We can flip on to the next slide. Perfect. So although we're putting forth an innovative approach to construction that integrates design, engineering, and construction and creates this high quality, very sustainable end product, everything has been designed and proposed for this site in compliance with the zoning ordinance. From total height and floors to the parking requirements and private open space, the project's in compliance. It's 68 feet in height, a total of 6 floors. We have 25 parking spaces on site, with the rest providing a payment in lieu. And the open space that Deborah just mentioned satisfies both the private open space within the building, as well as the ground floor open space along the site. As Brian mentioned, to kind of kick things off, we've designed our building from a scale standpoint to really align with the previous approved project on the site. That was also 68 feet in height, about 60,000 gross square feet, and it had 5 floors. Our unique system that we briefly walked you through allows us to add this extra floor within the same height, which in turn creates additional housing units, and we're at a total housing count of 44. So while aligning with the zoning ordinance and being in compliance, we're achieving varied housing opportunities and a highly sustainable end product, which we think really aligns with the goals of downtown Marlborough and the growth of the city for years to come. And briefly, just to kind of recap the design evolution of our project from our initial conversation, pre-site plan submission in early April to today. You can see on the left, this is actually the design that we put forth in our site plan application on April 22nd. And on the right are our updated designs that we've featured tonight. Some of the changes that we've made over the last several weeks include an articulated facade, which in turn reduces the massing effect on the ground floor and the frontage on the street. We've refined our stone texture and created a lighter hue, which we think aligns well with the stone aspects of the design standards and village district guidelines. We've created this varied materiality from the upper floors to the bottom ground floor, which creates a harmony from our more contemporary design for the residential floors through the traditional aspects of downtown Marlborough. And you can see on this ground floor the additional use of brick, which we've incorporated as part of some of the feedback that we've received over the last several weeks. And as it relates to certain design elements, like I said, we're really trying to merge some of the contemporary elements of our system and our design with the traditional aspects of Marlborough and the historic context of the city. You can see on the top row there some of the historical monuments that we've started to study in downtown and really tried to understand those materials and incorporate that into our design. The middle image there is a corridor shot down Main Street. You can see the use of stone actually on City Hall on the left, as well as brick on the right. And finally, our design images that you've seen here look to really align with what you're seeing on those top images with the use of this precast concrete paneling for our upper floors, as well as brick on the bottom floor to fully integrate with the fabric of downtown. We want to quickly just walk you through some key design considerations related to scale, the external appearance of the building, and the ground floor, and then just open this up to discussion around our project proposal. Quickly on the building scale, like I said, everything's been designed to be in compliance with the zoning ordinance. It's 68 feet in height and a total of 6 floors. And we've really concentrated on activating the ground floor through the commercial space, as well as reducing the effect of massing on potential pedestrian experience. This includes the articulated facade elements that we alluded to, as well as the use of brick along this ground floor. In terms of external appearance and some of our building elements, Deborah really highlighted the sustainable green design that we're putting forth as part of our system and really want to showcase here as our first project in downtown Marlborough. Related to that, we also want to be able to apply varied materiality that not only creates design nuances within the structure, but creates transparency as well. We've kept this ground floor relatively open so that the pedestrians that are activated on the street are walking and not feeling the burden of a full structure on them. We've used both precast panels as well as brick and stone to create this feel of a fully dynamic project on this important corner site. And then lastly, as it relates to this ground floor, which we think is really important for downtown Marlborough and this intersection, we've designed it to be anchored by this commercial space that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. We've utilized large transparent windows to create the effect of openness, and we've put forth a landscaping plan that we think further activates this ground floor and reduces, along with some of our design nuances, this feeling of mass on the street frontage. And, in total, between the scale, the external appearance, and this ground floor approach, we've gone through and fully studied the zoning ordinance and the Marlborough Village District guidelines. We've put forth a comparison, and we really think, and from this study, that we've aligned with a lot of this guidance and responded to some of the feedback from the site plan committee over the last several weeks. So with that, we're really excited about trying to push forward with this project. We think it's really important to get housing built in downtown Marlborough, especially housing product that's very sustainable. And we're excited to continue to work with you through this project.
All right, so Attorney Falk, that is the end of the presentation.
It is. Thank you, Madam Chair. Happy to take questions and from both the Site Plan Committee and also from the Urban Affairs Committee. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right, I'm just going to begin with a couple of things. First, for the people that might be watching this on television, I just want to remind everybody that when we created the Marlborough Village, that we made multi-family dwelling only allowed as part of a mixed-use development, and we put that mixed-use development not as a special permit, but as something that was allowed by right, with the council being involved in site plan. So as was discussed, this did go to the Site Plan Review Committee for some initial comments. I will go over those, but there is no special permit that the council can vote yay or nay on. It is a site plan that we are approving, and I will get to some of the specificity. The memo that we got from Priscilla and Site Plan Review does talk about that they discussed whether the minimum requirement set forth in the design standards section of Marlborough Village District had actually been met. And they discussed whether any of the recommendations in the design review guidelines were provided in the proposed building architecture. And it was decided that the council would be the one that would make that decision. So I know, for me, one of the pieces that is also in the code and in Marlborough Village is that we can use an outside consultant to help us as we look at this. I know I was one of the counselors that did attend the site plan meetings. I know that they did have a lengthy discussion on this. There were some revisions, and I certainly appreciate where we are currently. For me, I still have an issue with it meeting what I think the public perceived as a building that fit into downtown. That's me. It's now at Urban Affairs for kind of the discussion of the architectural aspect of this. And then I think once we get past that piece, we can get to some of the other details. I know I have some specific questions about the information that we received in the site plan, and I can get to those later, but I think I'm just going to open this up now for general discussions on what we have received, what's currently before us as a 68-foot tall building that will go on the corner of Granger Boulevard and Route 85. So,
Madam Chair, Councilor Navin.
Councilor Navin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that discussion, a way to kick us off here. And thank you to the WOHO team for this presentation. I was not, I know Councilor Wagner, I believe, was not either. We did not have the pleasure of voting on this special permit when it originally came before the council. So I appreciate the opportunity to kind of look at this site plan review. My comments are probably going to be fairly similar to what was discussed in the site plan review. I didn't get to attend the site plan meeting, but I did get to watch it on the Teams. So, you know, you guys hit the nail on the head. This is a very unique project, and it does check a lot of the boxes. Attorney Falk, you are correct that we're often looking for. The green features are great. The electric utilities, the solar panels on the roof, the sustainable building practices, it checks a lot of boxes. So I think that is great. Where I'm kind of having a struggle with, and I think a lot of other folks have as well from what I've heard, is the architectural design. You know, this parcel is a marquee parcel in downtown Marlborough. It is the gateway to the city. After a long commute, most nights coming back from Boston, I am coming up Route 85, and I kind of come up over the hill by Dollar Store. And you see the trees, and you see City Hall kind of poking out through the middle of downtown. You come across Main Street Bank, and then currently what you see is the white building. And, you know, so I spend a lot of time sitting at that traffic light wondering what's going to be there. And I have concerns over what this project proposes to be there, not because it's not a great building, not because it's not going to provide tremendous benefits that we're looking for, just I don't, in my own personal opinion, think that some of these architectural details fit what what else is in the village district. And I respect the fact that it checks all the boxes from the zoning rules, and I know that the design guidelines are just that, but when I think about the design guidelines for the village district, I think this may miss the mark a little bit. As the design guidelines say, you know, the whole purpose of having these guidelines is that, you know, it says, you know, in a well-planned commercial center, this can achieve a distinct sense of place, bringing people together to shop, work, and live, and by contrast, bad architecture in a poorly planned place can depress economic vitality. I want to make sure we get this right. I don't want to speak badly of the project itself, because I think, as I mentioned, you guys have done a lot of work, and you would provide a lot of benefits. I just think more work needs to be done on the architecture and how this particular building fits into downtown. So with that, I will stop going on and give some of the other members a chance to comment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Navin. Anybody else with comments on the committee first?
Councilor Landers?
Councilor Landers.
Yes. I'll be honest, when I first saw this, I says, boy, this is Cambridge. You know, and Cambridge isn't bad. You know, Cambridge has some unique features around Harvard and Central and so forth. But the more I look at it, and it brings back to a few years ago, I used to visit a lot of colleges, and the one that always stood out in my mind was Syracuse. They did a mixture of old and new, like I haven't seen on too many college campuses. And I think that's what I saw tonight, that with the talent that you people have, and actually, Madam Chair, they showed us some different stones, you know, they gave us brick and they gave us different types of design. I think I saw one there with white brick that could tie you into City Hall, even though it's a little distance apart. I guess the biggest thing I had to get used to, I'd like to see a little more land. In the first floor, you don't have another site that we could visit. Have you have a project similar to this anywhere within a 50-mile radius of here? No.
This would be our first project of similar scale, utilizing this system and some of these design elements.
But, you know, I'd like to see more land, but you're not going to get more land there. You know, in the first floor is basically a couple of retail stores and parking, which isn't terribly attractive, you know. But I'd like to see something exciting there. You know, I think, I think Marlborough could put up with that, get used to it. It would be a conversation piece, and it might be the start of something brand new. You know, I was a little disappointed. I thought that was going to be one of the first projects a few years ago, and it's obvious it didn't make it. But I'd like to see you people just continue, maybe throw a few more options out there that could fit in with this, Centennial Park across the street. You know, the Marlborough Savings Bank or the Main Street Bank, you know, that they did a nice job there. You know, so I don't know. I would encourage you to move forward and just see what the rest of us can come up with, and I don't know, maybe it could be pretty exciting for downtown. Madam Chair, that's it for now.
Thank you, Councilor Landers. Any other committee members?
Thanks. Madam Chair, Councilor Wagner.
Councilor Wagner.
I actually find this project really exciting. I appreciate the brick, details that brings in, this is a very modern building, and brings in the surroundings that way. I think it's a challenge for us. I know change is hard, but when we look at these quaint brick buildings on Main Street, they were built in the 1890s when, labor was was routinely exploited, and materials were much cheaper. And it's concerning to me that there's been several starts that haven't really taken off, and I know construction cost is really challenging, and trying to get funding for these projects, I think is a factor of why we're not seeing things that got approval that aren't moving. So this is something I really appreciate, the efficient design. I appreciate so much of the manufacturing is how it's going to be manufactured, the minimal disruption to the neighborhood. It'll go up quick. I love all the energy efficiency, and I think it's important to remember, again, when they were building those old buildings in the 1890s, we weren't understood a climate crisis that we're in now. And so I look at the roadmap, the next generation roadmap that the state passed, and that we are, have this ambitious goal of a 35% reduction in greenhouse gases by 2040, and we're never going to get there if communities build old-fashioned buildings that leak energy and, increase the demand for gas. This is exactly what we need to be building. I was so excited to see the words insulated envelope design. That helps with the efficiency, the fact that it's going to be manufactured in Massachusetts, and so that we're not dragging materials across the country, really thinking about that carbon footprint, and then all electric rooftop solar. This is a really exciting project in my opinion. And just want to add, I remember when the Zachem Bridge was going in, I was not a fan of the Zachem Bridge in Boston. I didn't think it fit, and now I just appreciate it and love it so much. And that happens when we bring new things, and this new is exciting. So wouldn't that be amazing? We have a new beautiful building it's going to attract people to downtown, and really we want to bring that foot traffic, bring the people back to the businesses and the restaurants. And that reminded me of the other thing I love the mix, 9 studio. I would love to, I don't think we're there yet, but I'd like to know what rent's going to be. But the fact that there's 9 studio, 21 bedrooms and 15 two-bedrooms makes me hope that there's a mix, at least, to add some affordability in these units, which would be also fantastic. So I think it's really exciting.
Thank you. I will just interject because I can. That I also appreciate all of the positives that you have pointed out. However, as a member of the council who was on the council when the city did an extensive review of both Marlborough Village and the guidelines, and we spent months doing projects with the public. What would you like downtown? What would you like on Main Street? What would you like on Granger Boulevard? This building as proposed, if we did that today, my guess is that it would still fit in with it doesn't fit into the community. So it's the look of the building that I still need to get past. And I don't know if we can get there because I don't know that their design will allow us. So maybe there's still a way to, and I know they talked about the fact that the ground floor was open. To me, that's one of the things that I dislike the most. I want to see more of that brick on the ground floor so that it looks more like the rest of downtown. If there's a way to maybe change up the facade so that it goes back to looking more like stone instead of just plain old off-white nothingness. Maybe that's an idea. So to me, I think the attempt to bring in, if not an architect, I know we have MAPC that helped us with the whole Marlborough Village and the design guidelines. There are architects as part of that piece. They can be brought in to help us work with the developer to see if there is anything further we can do to make it fit more into what I think was perceived when we created the village district. And I know that they did not show, but I think councilors were given the design of the original building. Yes, it was the same height and it pretty much was the same footprint, but it looked completely different. And so I think for me, that's a big piece of where I am at this point. And I will go back to anybody else who, I think Councilor Doucette, if you
Yes.
don't have anything, Councilor Perlman has her hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was waiting my time. I appreciate you calling on me. I'm fascinated by the business and the technology used for manufacturing of this building. And the company itself seems to have 2 offices in Spain and Cambridge. Is this a situation where technology was developed in Spain and is introduced into the U.S.? Or is that the case, or?
Mr. Ruiz or Ms. Molina, do you want to respond as the co-founders of the company?
Sure. This is Israel Ruiz, and I'll take the opportunity to also kind of introduce some of I was reminiscing in some of the discussions that I led on behalf of MIT as Cambridge and the Kendall Square district was redeveloped with some of these technology. So what I will say is with Anton and Deborah's professional life and research, Anton is a faculty member at MIT. Deborah has been holding an appointment at Georgia Tech. The technology and some of the fabrication, we are using the laboratory in Madrid, as you saw, to advance because our manufacturing has not been really moving with COVID and everything as fast as we would have liked here in Massachusetts. It will be open in time in Q3, but the technology is definitely like global, I would say. We're not importing technology. It will be manufactured by US. We are all in the US, and that will be all certified under US standards.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, it's not the material, it's the knowledge and the information that gets transported from Spain to Cambridge, but I'm fine with that. The one question I have, you said that it's going to be all electric. This is going to be heat pumps. That's a question.
That's what's currently planned.
Yes.
Okay,
We're evaluating
where are the,
but that's what's currently looked
sure, where are the heat pumps going to be located? Because they're not on the images.
Yes, we are locating in the images and in some of the roof plan that we submitted. There's a central spine that would gather all of the.
You just blanked out.
And in central part of, and wouldn't really be very visible from.
Okay. Okay, interesting approach. I think overall, I'll agree with a lot of what my other counselors are saying is, you know, there's a lot of brick within the community, especially within the district, and I like the lines of the design, especially the second generation that you guys provided, but I think, you know, having a brick facade as part of the integral piece, if that's possible to be put in place. I was looking at some of your notes. Materials designed to imitate brick are not permitted, but there might be a way to get around that within the manufacturing process to give the appearance of brick, because I think that that's an important part to make it fit within the community more better. Because aside from that, this is going to stand out significantly more than other buildings in the area. And, you know, the parking garages have more brick than you guys do. So, you know, I think that this is a promising new design. I wish you guys the best in developing this technology, and I'm hoping we can get some conclusion to this. Thank you.
And Councilor Perlman, I believe you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to contribute here, and want to thank the WOHO team for coming before us and being able to provide the overview. I think it was really helpful to kind of see the thought process and incorporation of many of the site plan review comments. I also kind of share a lot of the feedback that was given from other councilors, especially when looking at the project from an aerial view. It seems very large for the small amount of space in that parcel, particular land. It feels very bulky still in my regard. So even seeing the transition from the initial design to the second iteration, where there has been an incorporation of more brick and being able to have that kind of cafe or a restaurant area in the front, it feels very overwhelming. And I could imagine as a pedestrian feeling like very blocked in the way the setup currently is. And even with the color changes, it does feel extremely bulky, and actually reminds me of a building that was sort of made at a certain time where I went to university that, you know, was good at the moment that they made it, and then later on was always considered, you know, the least liked building only because it didn't match everything else. So I'm wondering if there are opportunities for revisions of the plan itself to kind of see other ways the facade could look. I imagine you're not compromising the height, but it did feel still very overwhelming given the proximity of other buildings in the space. And as Councilor Navin had mentioned, you know, this is such a central point of entry into the region, and also, you know, City Hall really is the tallest thing that you see in this area, and so I'd be concerned about having so much height in this particular area. And then referring to the Marlborough Village District, I do feel that a lot of the zoning incorporations were made and appreciate all of the environmentally friendly and conscious things. And I think those are the standards that we want buildings moving forward to do, and the innovative design is something that I want to make sure is maintained. But I know in the village district itself, in section 650-34, you know, it says that it's envisioned as a hub where, you know, buildings are reflecting and celebrating the existing historic character and enhances the traditional village atmosphere. And I do not feel that this project meets that requirement to really enhance the area. To me, it seems like a block. And I imagine, you know, even if this went through and there's a lot of the modern elements that could be applicable, you know, there is still that kind of quaintness of a downtown area that I think is uniquely different than others. And I agree with Councilor Landers. I do think, as someone who works in Cambridge, I do think this is something that seems to fit more of that aesthetic rather than the Marlborough downtown area. So that's some of my kind of overall comments. And I don't know, Madam Chair, I know you mentioned the possibility of an architect or other kind of outside consultants. Could you give a little bit more about, like, at what point in the process that would happen and, you know, what they're able to do? And I think that might help inform the discussion a little bit more for me.
Thank you, Councilor Perlman. Does anybody else have any comments, questions that they would like to bring at this point in time?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rossing.
Rossing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So a couple of points. So going back into history a little bit. So we set up the Marlborough Village District back in 2014, and Councilor Roby and I can have different views on what the intent was. But ultimately it was to bring housing, retail, and people downtown. We're 0 for 3. Okay, I just, you know, 7 years later, we haven't done anything. We've knocked down a building, but haven't put anything up yet. All right? So it gets down to what do you like or what do you want it to look like? All right? There's 11 councilors. You're going to get 11 different opinions of what it wants, what you think it should look like. And if we go to some outside vendor to tell me what I want it to look like, I guess I'll let you guys decide if you want that, but that to me is not of value. I believe I agree with Councilors Landers and Wagner that the concept and what they're building here, I think, is going to vitalize downtown. And here's a suggestion. Maybe it encourages some of our current downtown buildings to pick up the pace a little bit. I mean, do you want me to build another downtown building on that corner? I don't think so. I think this would attract people to Marlborough to live in this facility. I mean, I really think it's an attractive building. And okay, yeah, it's different, okay? But if you tell me I want to go build another Walker building there, well then let's put that design on and say build a Walker building there. I want some diversity in our downtown. And I think this hits the mark 100%. I want to review back in October 2018, when the Urban Affairs reviewed that, and Councilor Navin, you are correct, you were not here, but 8 of us were, and it was approved by the council. There were no objections. But here's the text from the Urban Affairs report. Attorney Bergeron gave a brief history of the project and how the project changed from the previous submission, and the new building changed substantially with a contemporary look and lots of glass. Ooh, contemporary. That's not the old downtown, all right? It's okay. It's not a bad thing to be contemporary. Council Landers, you're right. So if it has a little, what I call feel of the big city, hey, we're a small city, but it's okay to look like a big city in certain spaces. And I think this would be an excellent addition to the city. So I would strongly support it. And again, if we're going to go out to have someone else tell us what we want it to look like, pay me, I'll tell you what you want it to look like. Yeah, I don't think we have to go get someone else to tell us that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ossing. Anybody else with comments?
Madam Chair, Councillor Navin.
Councillor Nabin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I certainly appreciate a little bit of that backstory and history from President Ossing. A point of clarification. So I think that's absolutely right? When you've got 11 of us, you're definitely not going to get, 11 people to agree on the design. But when the special permit was approved, the council did agree on that design, right? Is that correct, or was it not part of the site? Okay. So I agree. There's nothing wrong with contemporary, and I agree with what Councillor Wagner said. Sometimes there are things that are exciting. I also agree with Councillor Wagner. No one wants to go build old, inefficient buildings, and I don't think anyone is looking to build old and inefficient buildings. I don't think they'd make a lot of money, especially if they're building old, inefficient, drafty apartment buildings that are fueled with coal and everything else. But I do think there's a happy medium. As I already mentioned, I think architecturally I have some issues with this. I think the previous design did look contemporary in a way while still having some historically architectural details. I liked the Zachem. I liked it when it was designed too. I think this looks more like City Hall Plaza in Boston instead of that. And they've been trying to tear that building down for years, and it's too expensive after it gets there. So I certainly don't want to see us, and no offense to the applicant, and I know it's not going to sound like I don't mean offense, but we don't want to get stuck with something that all of a sudden, as Councilor Perlman said, it goes, oh, look, that's, you can pick out every building from the 1960s. You know what that brutalist architecture looked like then, and it's still around. So, I do think that, some changes could help, and I think we can make some changes without losing a lot of the benefits that we're all looking to have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nabin. Did I see Councilor Perman's hand up, or not any longer?
Yes, Madam Chair. If I may, I appreciate the comments that have been made so far. And one thing I'm thinking about a lot is, whenever I've talked to people about downtown, there's always such positive remarks about Hudson's downtown. And I think a lot of that speaks to the historic character that it still maintains. And I agree there is nothing wrong with contemporary, but to Councillor Nabin's point, I think there's still work to be done on this project to make it better fit the area, and also, to really celebrate the history of Marlborough in a way. Right now, it feels like this building could be anywhere, and I do appreciate the brick that was added, in the front, but that seems more of a Band-Aid than really an integration in my mind. And so I would love to see more of a thoughtfulness to make sure that this is a building that is in Marlborough, and that's the reason why WOHO wants to come here, is because of Marlborough itself, and that's incorporated throughout the design. And so I know not like there should be a shoe anywhere on it or anything like that, but I do think within the structure itself, it could better fit the character of the area. And then, people won't be talking about how great Hudson is, they'll be talking about how great Marlborough is.
Thank you, Councillor Perlman. Anybody else with comments?
Madam Chair, it's Councillor Doucette.
Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This has been fun, but I have to make an acknowledgement here that this, for WooHoo, this is their first major large-scale project ever done. So there's learning pains in this one that they're going to take to other projects. And this is in a marquee location in the city, and when it's done, if it gets to be done, it will be a marquee point for the city and for you. So we're all working to make this best, because it's best for the community, it's best for them, because this is going to be, look how great it worked out in Marlborough. We want to put another one in your community, because you guys just want to manufacture these things, which is all fine. Having said that, the other thing, I think having some way to put brick within the design, more brick into the design, would make it fit more into the community. The other thing, as far as heat pumps go, She talked about saying that all the heat pumps are inside an inner chamber area, like almost like a courtyard area. I'm using my terms, because she was blanking out during part of it. The problem with that is that heat pumps are loud. I just got one last year. And if you have all the heat pumps running at one time and you're walking into this, chamber area, they're all going to be going nuts. So you got to be careful about sound issues when you have so many heat pumps within those areas. So you guys got to keep an eye on that. You guys also may want to consider doing geothermal heat, drill some wells down underneath the property that you have before you build it up, and therefore you don't have to worry about the loud heat pumps that go outside. So think about that. Also increases the efficiency of the energy used for heating and cooling too, which would also be an awesome demonstration of technology for you guys. I am concerned that this is the first project, and other approach towards modular construction has resulted in leaks and unalignment in construction issues. I'm concerned of that, but I'm hoping you guys solve it because you guys got smart people with adequate computers. So, and you guys are smarter than the computers, so I'm going to leave it at that. But I think I'm not sure if we want to get MAPC involved. I think Councilor Rossi made an interesting point. I don't think an architect's going to convince us one way or another. I think we have our own opinions, and that's the way it's going to be. But that's enough for me tonight. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Councilor Dumas.
Councilor Dumas.
Thank you. Seeing that it is in Ward 3, I feel like I should give my opinion on this. The first time that we met, I enjoyed the project. But again, coming from where I standpoint and how I live my life, I'm a minimalist. I like clean lines. I'm very contemporary focused, so of course I was drawn to the project. I like the European style of living, smaller rooms, not enough stuff, and this fits all my boxes personally. But I also like the idea of how polarizing the project is. It gets people talking, people will recognize it, people would want to come see it. And I think what kind of sealed the deal for me was the fact that this is their showcase. My concern at any time a developer comes in, are they going just to abandon the project once it's done being built? They will not, because they need to make money off of how good this project is so they can sell it to other people. So they're thinking Marlborough, and everyone wants to think Marlborough. It's our tagline. They are thinking Marlborough. And I like that idea. They want to stay in Marlborough. They want to cultivate Marlborough, and they want to bring new life to downtown, but with such a polarizing, efficient building. And I can't stress how efficient this project is. For me, that's exciting. I have issues with parking, but as far as the whole scope of the project, I like it. And it's all going to come down to 11 councilors, whether you like it or not, because if you look at the schematics and the dimensions compared to what I thought was a very boring project that we passed, it's all the same. So you are literally voting whether you like it or not, and whether it's good for downtown or not. So look at the project beforehand. Again, I thought it was just like every other project, very basic. This checks all the boxes compared to the previous project. You have to ask yourself, are you voting if you like it or not, or whether it's good for downtown? Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Thank you. Councilor Wagner.
Thank you. Excellent points. I really appreciate Councilor Dumas's comments. I just wanted to add, I think for me personally, as we think through this, another architectural opinion wouldn't necessarily I don't think there's a lot of value added to that. What I would like to understand is, why do we approve multiple projects that have never pulled building permits? And again, if the problem is, if we're going to complicate this and have yet another building that nobody can get funding for, I'm not sure what we're really accomplishing here. So, I mean, the efficiency, my suspicion is when the villages and the look was being discussed, at that time, there probably wasn't a whole lot of conversation around energy efficiency. And this is something that's just got to be paramount in everything we do. So all those combinations, and if we're going to build something, if we put a lot of obstacles in the way that change some projects so much that nobody's going to get funding for it, again, the usefulness of us as a body then escapes me. So I would love to, if there's more information to be gathered, not another architectural design, but rather let's look at why the projects that we're approving are not launching. That would be really helpful.
Madam Chair?
Council Wagner, I think your point is a good one. I really don't know why they haven't. They were approved well before the pandemic set in, well before any kind of issues of cost for increase in building that would make a project not go through today. We had one, Eon Main, we were assured she had cash in her pocket, that was going to get done. We went out of our way to approve it. I think the original project for this site was the same way. We were under the impression that there was funding available, and I think that's the piece that throws off the ability to build. So there have to be other costs that are part of any project that add in cost besides just the actual materials. There's a lot of infrastructure that will have to be done for this building, that regardless of what it looks like or how it's built. So maybe those were a big piece of it. And I do think that there probably is a little bit of difference nowadays with energy conservation and the big push for that. So there is nothing in our code that prevents anybody from doing energy efficiency. We are a green community, and I think we would probably encourage builders to meet the green code. This one is going above and beyond probably, but I don't think we can answer that question of why the projects that we've approved haven't gone forward. To me, it's more trying to figure out, and I know sitting at the site plan meetings that they have changed the look of the building, and they have made some changes to try to get to the points that the site plan committee brought to them. I don't know if there is the ability to make even more change to that. I will point out that the code specifically prevents the use of, and I was reminded of this at site plan, that it prevents the use of material that looks like brick. So they can't take that facade and make it look like a brick by painting it to look like brick or using concrete to make it look like brick. But they could make it look like stone or make it look a little bit different. So if there is not the desire by committee members to bring in someone who would work with us to try to work with the developer to see if there is something more that can be done to the building, or if the developer is not willing to continue that process, then I guess we're at a standstill, and we have a project that we need to be voting on. So I see Councilor Perlman has her hand up, and then I guess I'll go back to maybe either Attorney Falk or...
Councilor Landis has a few comments too.
All right, so Councilor Perlman first.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a brief, I guess, point of information or question that I know the site plan committee is with us. Or do we want to utilize any more insights from their meeting? I see several of them on the line and didn't know if we would be, referring to them at all for any of, their takeaways for those of us who couldn't attend the site plan live. I was able to watch part of it, but wanted to kind of give them the opportunity, Madam Chair, if you would like to see if they want to give anything in addition to the comments we received.
I'm sure that they're willing to. I'll let Councilor Lander speak first and then see if anybody wants to offer. I know that they certainly will come into play when we get into, assuming we're saying this is the building, now we need to look at the more detail of it and ask other questions, they will be resourced. So if that's your question, then we'll let Councilor Lander speak, and then I'll open it up to see if anybody from site plan has any comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Speaking of detail, you know, just listening tonight, I think some concern a little bit has been that first floor and the parking. What I would like you people, and I assume you will be back, and I hope you're back, talk a little bit about retail in the cafe. Just give us an idea what you could envision. I forget the dimensions of the retail, but it must be a couple thousand square feet anyway, just to see what you could see that could be retail, and then a cafe, whether it's for 3 meals a day, 2 meals a day, or drink after a chamber meeting. You know, I'm not sure. I mean, after a city council meeting, I'm not sure. So I think I'd like to see those 3 areas expanded upon a little bit. The parking, first floor parking, retail, and if we were talking about some type of cafe. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, so I don't know if anybody from the project wants to answer. If you really thought more detail, you have it on the facade as a cafe, if that was just kind of a holdover, or if you really don't know who would go and would be amenable to anything going in there.
Jake's.
Well, I think in previous meetings and discussions, I think the honest answer is we will have to study that to really understand it. But we had proposed, for instance, a tapas bar or like a small restaurant that would be both serving the residents but also really enlivening the downtown. And I think that's really the ambition of the project. If we put forward not only what we believe is an extraordinary building and system, but also really the opportunity to create truly a pedestrian downtown, that we would do that. We would, and we've been in discussions with retail consultants, both in the area and others. I think that the 24/7 openness, I think with the pandemic, we've seen other things, but the cafe or the logo of the cafe was just a rendering effect of one of the possibilities. We do not have an answer yet for who would go into that space.
Okay, so site plan. Anybody who wants to offer comments or open their mics for maybe specific questions if Councilor Perlman had them?
Hi, this is Priscilla Ryder, and I see Brian has his hand up, so I'll let him talk first, and then I don't really have any comments. I think the design thing is what you guys have to grapple with, and I think you're doing a fine job.
Thank you, Priscilla. And yes, I'm sorry, Attorney Falk, I did not see that you had your hand up until after I called on her. So did you have a comment or questions that you wanted to put forth?
I appreciate the discussion. It is interesting to hear different views on design, and as Councilor Dumas said, I won't use polarizing, but I think certainly the building would be a discussion piece downtown, which is not a bad thing either way you sit. What I was going to suggest is we have some comments from the site plan committee from the memo that you received today. As I mentioned, we reviewed it, we're comfortable with it. Some of them are things that we just need to update the site plan that we submitted. Some of them are things that we'll either add to our draft decision as conditions. But what I would suggest is, while this committee is still thinking through design, there may be a few more things we can do in terms of showing further, trying to further reflect the area in the neighborhood. What I would suggest is if we can go to site plan on Tuesday, June 1st, if this committee can take us up on Thursday, June 3rd, I think we'll be able to make some progress on the site issues and perhaps provide some additional design ideas for you to take a look at on June 3rd. And I'm not trying to step on the gas pedal too much in terms of your timing. I don't want people to feel rushed. Having said that, our purchase and sale agreement with our current property owner does have some tight deadlines. And we have the last council meeting in June in mind for ourselves as a vote. If that can happen, we can make things move forward. If that doesn't happen, it's going to be difficult for us to proceed. Now, again, I'm not trying to rush anyone. I'm just trying to point that it's a reality of what our current agreement says, and you know, we're willing to move as fast as we can to get you the information that you need. But again, I'm suggesting that we wrap up some of the site issues with the site plan committee early next week and get back before you on Thursday, June 3rd, if possible, to continue this discussion on design.
And I think that I thought was June 3rd would probably be a meeting that we would need to have anyway. I know for me personally as a counselor, I don't really care what your purchase and sale deadline is. We will work through. I know that was brought up when we are discussing a project on Route 20, and we're almost a year later, and that purchase and sale still doesn't seem to be impacted. So if this owner of this property wants to sell, I think they would be patient and let us get through the process before panicking too much. I have a couple of questions that I would like some clarity on, and maybe they could then also be discussed at site plan. I know when I talked to Priscilla. The first one is tonight's info says that there's 44 units, but the sheets that we received say 21 bedroom and 22 bedroom. So where are the other 4? And if you use the 40 number, the calculations for 1 bed and 2 bed, you're required to have 40 spaces, not 41. So it would only be 15. So if they're in fact only 40, then that needs to be changed too. And I'm curious on the private open spaces, where you can have 50% of it inside the building. So are you using the balconies? Are they considered usable, or are they really just ornamental? And are you counting the rooftop deck within the 2,200 square feet that's in the building? And are you counting, what are you counting in the 2,200 on the ground level? Because you can't count the buffer strip and the plantings. Then I'm also curious if the walkway that you're including in the drawing is open to the public, or if it will be private in some aspect. And also there was a statement about you need to work with the CDC, and I don't know if that will be an issue going forward. If there is a problem with that, does that impact this project? So I don't know if those are questions you can answer tonight. If I went through them too quickly, I can repeat them. So
I think I can quickly respond to some of the program questions. So I think the initial site plan application that we put forth was indeed 21 bedrooms, 22 bedrooms. As our design has continued to evolve over the last several weeks, within that same floor plate, we haven't added square footage or anything. We've rearranged some of our unit mix. So now we have 9 studios, 21 bedrooms, and 15 two-bedrooms. That's how we're arriving at the total unit count of 44. That creates the varied housing options that I think Councilor Wagner hit on before, as well as the varied price points in terms of rent that we really want to serve downtown Marlborough and the residents of the city. For the parking count, that also triggers the updated parking count. I think, Brian, you can jump in here, but we have 25 spaces on site within our proposed plan, and then the rest, which would be 16 parking spaces, we would be making a payment in lieu for those spaces. We've outlined that in our zoning memo that we passed along, and it was also, I think, on the deck tonight as well. In terms of the open space, the balconies are not ornamental at all. Those are part of the residential units, and actually a key piece of our design to integrate both kind of the in-unit living experience with the connection to the natural world via that generous balcony space that we're providing as part of our design. So there's that as part of the open space. There's the potential roof deck, which you mentioned. There's amenity space built into the actual floor plates, the residential floors as well. And then the open space on the north side of the lot, the landscaping that we put forth will actually be a public open space and fully landscaped and curated.
Okay, so I don't know when they were delivered, but yesterday I went to City Hall and picked up a manila envelope that had 2 very large documents. On the cover of one of them, it very specifically states 21 bedroom and 22 bedroom. So I was interested when Councilor Wagner spoke about the 92115 because I don't know where that came from. I also have, and the only floor plans that I can find came from a document that is dated April of 2021. And looking at that document and the floor plans, I cannot see any studios. They're all 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom, and I come up with 20 and 20. So I think that if that's not the floor plan, that we need to see a new floor plan that shows me where studios are and where your count is.
Sure, we can certainly provide the documents I think you received. We provided the initial site plan application for everybody to be able to review, along with the updated images from our exterior design from our May 18th site plan committee meeting. I believe on the May 4th meeting, we actually presented the evolved design floor plan. I can work with our attorney, Brian, and make sure you have that shows where the studios are actually located. We can also provide updated drawings as well.
Okay, and I'm sure that will be something that site plan wants to look at, especially if in fact you're talking about the heat pumps. I'm sure they're going to want to know where they're located within the building related to this inner core, because I don't see an inner core either. So I think those will be structural pieces that'll be part of the later discussion once we get past maybe the outer construction. So if there's something else that you can come up with that you would be presenting at site plan that might help those of us who don't particularly think that what we approved as a contemporary building for the original product is quite it's what we want going forward. If you can't get there, then I guess we have to make that hard decision and vote on a site plan, because that's where we are.
Okay, so I think, like Brian said, we can certainly provide an updated plan set as part of the June 3rd meeting and the June 1st meeting as well. In terms of some of the mechanical engineering and the design development, that's an ongoing process, and we're obviously making decisions as we go here related to some of the inner engineering of the building. So in terms of like our core and stairwell, that's presented on our floor plates, but some of the details behind our engineering systems, is still being worked through, which we would continue to work through through our final submission for a building permit. So we can certainly talk through where we're planning to put those, but we don't have like a full construction document set at this plan of the site plan approval process.
Okay, and I guess I kind of understand that. And site plan, I think overall is more knowledgeable of what they need to do their more detailed site plan approval. I certainly don't know anything about the engineering aspects. I certainly can read code and make sure that the square footage and the height and that's what detail is there, but they know more about the building piece.
Sure, and we followed the site plan checklist. WSP, our civil engineer, is actually on. We have the stormwater system designed as part of our civil engineering. The utility plan hookups, that's all part of our site plan application. So those engineering aspects are indeed a part of this site plan application.
Okay, and I know stormwater was one of the points mentioned in the memo from site plan. So those are things that I think that we trust them to take care of, and as well as the landscaping and lighting details. We like to know that a general aspect, but they're more involved in the specificity of that. So I'm sure they'll take care of it. It's more how this building is going to look at this point that I think. So if there's further changes that can be made, if that's your plan, then I guess that would be something I would look forward to. If it's not possible to make further changes to the look of the building, then I think we need to know that, and that will help in our decision.
Okay. And Madam Chair, I think you mentioned the last question that I didn't fully understand. I just want to make sure our team members also heard it and have an opportunity to respond, to just make sure you have what you need.
The last of my...
Yeah, it was, you were running through some of the
walkway. Yeah. There is a walkway that's shown on the north side of the building that kind of goes from the street that I'm blanking on what the street that runs parallel to Granger, so that you could sort of cut through the property and not have to go all the way around Granger. And so it wasn't clear to me if that was going to be accessible. The code says that your open space can be private or public. So I didn't know if that walkway was considered open to the public or not.
Okay, and we could provide some more detail in our follow-up plans on that element. I thought you had mentioned something about an agency process in one of your questions, and I just wanted to make sure I heard properly.
I can address that. I think Chairman Roby was referring to the Community Development Authority parking lot to our north, where a portion of the property, our private open area on the ground level, you can't tell where the property lines are because it's essentially one open space on the ground, and we're going to keep it that way. We would need a license agreement or an easement from the CDA. That's something that was part of the original plan for this project, and it's something that we are looking to carry forward too. And that's a condition in our draft decision, that we need to acquire the real estate rights we would need and the agreements we would need with the CDA to do that. And so we will do that. We've got the condition in place now, and I think it would be a huge improvement for both properties to have that open space remain, essentially as one piece.
Right, and I'm sorry, I had forgot about that part of the questioning. So, all right. So, members of the committee, are we okay with keeping this in committee for now? Let it go to site plan for some further. Is site plan okay with taking this back to continue the discussion?
Madam Chair, Councilor Navin.
Councilor Navin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know it's getting late, so I'll be really quick on this one. Just since we have Priscilla and site plan here, this was discussed, I think, a little bit during site plan, is what you had mentioned about the possibility of bringing MAPC on just to do some help. I think, I'm in agreement a little bit on that, and though I think we may be in the smaller column on that one, but I was wondering if Priscilla could just give any kind of insight on their thoughts on that as well. I recognize that they're not going to come up with a design for us, but if there are some ways that they could help point us in the right direction where we could get to a yes, I think it's at least something worth exploring, and maybe that's after site plan meets again with the proponent and they can, show what they're able to do. This may be premature, but just kind of like to hear a little bit what they think on that, and if there are other counselors that may have questions about what that process would look like. Thank you.
So, Ms. Ryder, do you want to respond to that?
I guess I would just say that, if you're looking for guidance to help do it, figure out how to incorporate the design elements that are in the downtown district guidelines. I was struggling with that because I'm not an architect and I didn't know quite how to do that. But again, I think it's your call as to whether that's something that you want to pursue or not. And again, it's just some, you know, and if they have some ideas that they want to put together, I mean, we wouldn't have anybody's on board before the 1st or the 3rd. So I mean, if they want to do an attempt at some additional things, we can look at that, and then you guys can decide whether that's enough or whether you need some more help. And Tom, I don't know if you had any thoughts on that or not.
No, I would agree with what you said. I think there's some, there's the design guidelines, and then there's some standards in the ordinance that have some shalls, and I think, I'm not sure that another opinion is necessary for the council to decide whether some of the elements that are in the ordinance are met with this. I think there's enough minds at the tables there to figure that out. That's just my opinion.
Steve, got the solicitor this hand up. Solicitor Grossfield, do you have comments you'd like to make?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. So one of the things, and Tom just alluded to it, is, you know, when the council is reviewing in this capacity in terms of site plan review, it's a much more limited role than, say, with a special permit. So with site plan review with a by right use, essentially if a project meets the design standards in the zoning ordinance, other than conditioning the project to get to that point, there's a very high hurdle to deny site plan in that case. And so for this district, the zoning ordinance has mandatory design standards, and I would encourage the committee and the council to certainly reflect on the design standards and the project that's proposed in the site plan. But to go along with that are non-mandatory design guidelines, and those obviously have less of an effect on ultimately what the council would review. So all that's to say, it's important when thinking about the site plan to match up how the plan meets with the exact design standards in the ordinance.
Thank you, Solicitor. So I would just remind people that it is specifically spelled out in the code in design standards that in performing site plan review, the City Council may employ services of qualified professional consultants as provided under MGL Chapter 44, Section 53G. The services may include those of an urban designer, an architect, or a landscape architect. So I think that, yes, we can look at what they have provided, and yes, we can individually sit and go through to say if they've met it or not. But I don't know why it doesn't hurt to have somebody come in to help us do that and offer maybe counterpoint to their saying that they have met them or agree that they have. And,
Madam Chair?
Councilor Wagner.
I think and I realize we have our process and there's, you know, who we're accountable to is different than, but I'm just making note that I think we need to take that into consideration too, if, that there's a timeline on this project and we can do that, but I would hate to see money spent that, I mean, a process like that is going to extend this by a month or two, no? And that might make the whole project moot if the purchase and sale, I mean, maybe that's part of the consideration. If there's not enough information here, I mean, maybe we need to be honest about, but if we take something like that on and it, again, drags out a couple of months and then the purchase and sale is gone, this whole project might go away. So I think we need to take that as but use that as, include that as a factor in our decision-making?
I understand what you're saying. I don't know what the timeline is. My understanding is that asking MAPC to do this happens very quickly, if that's who we want to go with. Figuring out who from MAPC is available and when they are available is an unknown in the whole bigger picture. So the decision might be to have us ask Meredith to at least extend a query to MAPC and say, how quickly could you get someone if it winds up that they can't do anything for a month? Then I would agree that maybe we need to just deal with this on our own as a council, and the 11 of us can have our 11 opinions in the bigger picture.
Madam Chair, Councilor Ossing.
Councilor Ossing.
Madam Chair, I'm happy to talk to Meredith at MEDC to see if MAPC is available. I will caution you that MAPC is extremely busy right now, and the odds of getting someone to just drop everything to support this is probably limited, but I'm happy to check and get something formally back from Meredith probably before the end of the week as to whether MAPC could support it, though I'm not really sure what we're asking MAPC to do. I mean, you know, to look at something we are going to decide. My recommendation would be to get all the councilors at the June 3rd meeting and just do a show of hands. Do you support the project or not? And if the wish of the council is to support it, it only takes 6 votes. It's site plan. It's not a special permit. Then that would give you as a committee some direction on which way to head. But, you know, I mean, we can, again, I'm just not, again, it's me. I don't know what, they're going to come back and say they like the building or don't like the building, or meets the design that doesn't meet the design. I mean, you heard the solicitor. If it meets the design standards, which the applicant's given their version, I haven't heard anything from site plan that says it doesn't. Do you like it or you don't? If you don't like it, it's fine, then we don't approve the project. If you like it, let's move forward with it. It's site plan review. It's not a special permit. So I just want to make sure. But I will take the action and get back to you this week, Madam Chair, on, I guess the instructions are, ask MAPC if they're available to review the design of the building. I mean, I don't know what if you can write up what you want, I'm happy to go ask and get her done. How's that?
Okay, and I think for me, it would look at the documents that we've received from the applicant and have them look at them, and also then offer to see if they think there's anything further that could be done to bring it to meet the maybe non-required aspect of this, the guidelines.
Again, Madam Chair, I'll go back to the Pirates of the Caribbean and the pirate code. These are guidelines. It's not the code. And so you're going to have 11 different opinions as to whether we think it meets the guidelines or not. That's just what it is. And if the sense of the council is to go forward, we go forward. If the sense of the council is to not, then we drop it, we let the applicant know, and we move on.
You're right. So if you will at least just check with MAPC, if we find out that they are absolutely not available, we will know that and go forward. I see Councilor Perlman has her hand up, and then I think it's about time we wrap this up. We're just going around in circles at this point. So Councilor Perlman?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and I know it's getting late as well. My understanding from the comments from site plan 2 is that because the city council has a site plan role, that they didn't want to make a final determination necessarily around whether or not I met the guidelines. So I think it doesn't hurt to ask and see if there's someone available. We obviously don't have a city planner, and so the skill sets are, different for those who are involved, but none of us kind of has that foresight of thinking of this downtown region, taking into the design characteristics and trying to make the best decision. So I know I'm not on the committee, but I do support at least an inquiry to MAPC, and hopefully, as soon as President Ossing hears back that the council is notified would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Perlman. Any other councilors with comments?
Councilor Landers, Chairman.
Councilor Landers.
Yeah, I think there's 11 councilors. I think we can decide, personally. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Councilor Doucette?
Councilor Doucette.
Motion to adjourn?
There is no discussion on a motion to adjourn. However, I would ask that maybe you hold off on making that for just a few more minutes. I was kind of going to get a sense of the committee. I think at this point it's in committee. If the committee feels there's no need to go to MAPC, then we won't. If the committee feels we do, then I think that I will ask President Ossing in his role as president to reach out to Meredith. So,
Are you gonna ask for a formal vote, Madam Chair?
how about a consensus?
Okay, I'm gonna pull back my motion then, just because.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Council Wagner, I agree with Council Landers, and I think we're ready, we are capable of making a decision, and I don't really see the value added to bringing in an outside agency, which honestly sounds like it's just going to add months, and I'm not sure what they're really going to contribute.
Thank you. Councilor Doucette?
Yeah, Madam Chair, as I said before, I don't think MAPC is going to add any value. I think we're already disagreeing as much as they can. They're just going to throw fuel into the fire, to be honest.
Okay, so I would guess that consensus, Councilor Ossing, if you do not move forward with talking to Meredith, we will be okay. I guess the idea is for this to go back to formal site plan. I'm not sure exactly what will happen there, and I don't know if, I did not hear any specificity on if there is the ability to make further changes to the structure to maybe, for some of us, more meet the design guidelines.
Madam Chair, if I may, you've seen from our slides our construction program and how the structure is put together. Given the site and given that process, there's not a whole lot of deviation we're going to be able to make with the building design itself. We will certainly take all the comments we heard tonight into consideration in terms of what more we may do in terms of materials and treatments to make for an even better fit. And we'll bring that back to you. And what I would hope to do with the site plan committee is to take their detailed and helpful memo that we received tonight and try to address all those issues, either through a revised site plan or updated conditions. The list of issues is fairly limited, and I think we can wrap that up fairly quickly on Tuesday with them.
Okay, thank you. So does that sound like a plan for this committee? We have a meeting scheduled for June 3rd.
Madam Chair, as Councilor said, I just have one request for the applicant. I would like to see basically floor plans for each of the floors of the building, because it's not there. We see the outside, we see the construction process, we get all that. But, we didn't know about this inner chamber cavity until we got into the conversation here. I'd like to see how that all maps out. So we typically see that in the other constructions that are going on. This is new. Again, you guys are still learning. It's all good. We'll get through this. So with that, can I reapply my motion?
Thank you. And I think that was one of the points that I tried to make. And I was looking at a site plan that I believe in one of the documents that you got sent from, that was sent to site plan review, there is a floor plan if you dig deep enough into the package. And that's what I was looking at. And so my bedrooms don't match up. So if in fact there is a different floor plan, I think we would all appreciate it, as would site plan. So Councilor Doucette, you have a motion to adjourn.
Yes, I do.
All right, and it's been moved and seconded to adjourn. I will take a roll call vote. Councilor Landers.
Councilor Landers votes yes.
Councilor Doucette.
Councilor Doucette votes yes.
Councilor Nabin.
Councilor Nabin votes yes.
Councilor Wagner.
Council Wagner votes yes.
And Councilor Roby votes yes. So we are adjourned. We will take this back up on June 3rd after we get further information from Site Plan Review Committee. Thank you all for your information provided tonight, and evening.